Isaiah 59, 9 through 14. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places, and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water, whose water never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the streets to live in. If you refrain from trampling the Sabbath, from pursuing your own interests on my holy day, if you shall call the Sabbath a delight and the holy day of the Lord honorable, if you honor it, not going your own ways, serving your own interests, or pursuing your own affairs, then you shall take delight in the Lord, and I will make you ride upon the heights of the earth. I will feed you with the heritage of your ancestor Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Please stand for the reading of the gospel. Before us, the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 13th chapter. Now, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day." But the Lord answered him, saying, "Hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And not ought this woman, a daughter of Abraham and Sarah, whom Satan had bound for 18 long years, ought she not to be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When Jesus said this, his opponents were put to shame. The entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that Jesus was doing. The Gospel of our Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
The congregation may be seated. So for you, another vacation story. This one from, it might have been my very first vacation as a pastor. I took a trip. It was one of those days where, well, you just found that you wanted to just go someplace. and not being ready to spend big bucks because I was fresh out of seminary. I packed the family into the car and said, well, let's see where this interstate highway goes. And it went all the way to Louisiana before a red light came on in my car. It was one that had to do with electricity in the car. Oh, you like those, huh? And it was kind of just telling me the battery was not receiving any charge anymore. Which is okay for a few minutes, or a few more miles, or someplace, but, well, here was a town. Delhi. That's how they say it in Louisiana, Delhi. In India, they call it Delhi. But it was Delhi in Louisiana. And, well, the man at the Best Western, who was from Delhi, India, was happy to take us in. Not so much the mechanic at the Exxon station that was very near the inn. That mechanic had a lot of work in front of him. And he really didn't have a lot of time to spare. And quite frankly, neither did I, because this was only a week vacation, and I'd already driven from Chicago to Louisiana. And there was a Sunday coming up, and I was going to be the preacher. And so this was a double Dutch trouble for me, because not only would I be missing a Sabbath, but I'd be skipping work. Which, if you grew up in my household, you didn't do either one of those. Well, I made sure that my daughters were with me the next time we walked into town. It's a sly trick, wouldn't you say? And I made sure that I stopped by the Exxon station where the mechanic was. Oh, he'd already checked with the dealership. They could probably have something done in a week or two. I just kept my hands on the shoulders of my daughters, thinking about how that hotel room kept ringing up in my mind, just contemplating, knowing that, well, I was a stranger in Louisiana. And if you think I'm strange here, you should see me in Louisiana. Way out of place. Well, that day he decided to have a little compassion on me. And he said, we can go into the next town. There's a place in there, an electronic shop. Maybe they can get the alternator fixed. Didn't know you could do that, did you? I mean, I did. I didn't know that there were a lot of shops that could pull something like that off. So into town we went. This was an hour drive. There would be some waiting time, an hour drive back, and he said, I don't think I came to the top of his queue, his work schedule, but I think he had compassion. I, of course, was plenty anxious. And he walked in with my alternator in hand, and he set it on the counter. And the fellow walked out, clearly the owner of the shop, and began talking with him. And they talked about where they were from. I don't know about you, but I just don't see a clear pathway to fixing an alternator if you're going to talk about where you're from. But I was already well aware that I didn't belong in this community. And frankly, to make the first illusion, I was crippled, bent over. Because I didn't recognize any of the towns they were talking about, nor any of the families that they were talking about, nor any of the other people that they were talking about. And while they were talking, the workmen from the shop came out. Family members and the other workmen as like. There was a group of 5. Everything had stopped for this conversation to happen. And everybody threw in one more person that they knew, one more town that they'd been to, one more place that they talked at, and then it happened. They found somebody they had in common. It was somebody's cousin's neighbor's friend from school, from when they were but Joshua. And that was it. Everything happened at that moment. The owner of the shop said, well, let's see what we can do about this alternator. I mean, it was like it flowed direct from the stream of who you knew and how you knew them to time to fix the alternator. I had never seen anything like that in my life. And quite frankly, I've been to Pennsylvania Dutch country with my dad and his dad and my grandmother and all the people that they knew and talked with and from which town and where and what, and this work moved from the counter into the hands of one of the assistants. He's in the back room, and by the time they finished telling the second story that they now have in common, the fellow comes out and he says, yeah, it's bad. And we can, I think you do this with alternators, rewind it. It'll be a couple hours. And now we had a restaurant recommendation across the street. Really good barbecue, by the way. Louisiana barbecue, too. And everything was okay. I made it. I made the Sabbath back at work by a little bit. But it's where you belong. Was the whole, I hadn't seen anything like that in my life. I mean, we do that a little bit here. Yesterday, at the funeral, one of the people who came to pay tribute, Isabel, is a Cross and Crown school mother. Son Ryan came here. And so she's bonded together with the group of, Ryan's now 15. But she's still bonded together with the group of moms that were of that age when they came. And more than one of them felt it necessary to come and introduce themselves to, the new guy. And reminisce. And more than one of them apologized for not coming to church anymore because their community was dispersed. Can you imagine for a moment being crippled, bent over? I mean, occasionally we see somebody who's so bent over that they can't even really lift their head. It is only when they're seated that we can see them eye to eye. It just looks awful. I don't know what 18 years of that would be like. I'm not comfortable with these 18 seconds. I'm pretty sure she wasn't part of the community. All gathered round. The crowds gathered round. Here she is in the synagogue. And to be sure, this isn't a genuine curing on the Sabbath story because Jesus isn't accused of breaking the law. The leader of the synagogue surely knows that you're allowed to do acts of mercy on the Sabbath. Absolutely. That's what untying your ox and leading it to water is about. And using this image of we know how to treat our animals, but our people? Now, the leader of the synagogue doesn't go after Jesus because the crowd is with him. He goes after the crowd. You can come any day you want. 6 days in a week for healing. I guess maybe missing the point that she'd been this way for 18 years and the healing hadn't happened. Whatever it is that separates the people in the community from the people outside of the community, maybe it's an accent, Chicago. Maybe it's a license plate from the wrong place. Maybe it's a we just don't know you. Maybe it's, well, we're the old people. They're the young people. I mean, we spend a lot of time defining who belongs and who doesn't. And we'll even use our rules and our regulations, you know, the ones we've grown so accustomed to. I mean, after all, it is the way to keep the community together, to have them mandated to come on Sunday mornings, right? It's our Sabbath. It's when we're supposed to be here. How's that working for you, folks? When we use this, let's call it a law. When we use this law to divide the us's and the them's, we break community. We break it down. I think back on this. I don't think about it like this anymore, but I used to, pretty sincerely, think that the church was amazing hypocrites because we would say, you got to come Sunday mornings. That's when we offer the service, the worship. Here is your Sabbath. Here it is. Of course, you know, us Christians have moved the Sabbath off of Saturday and we moved it on to Sunday because we're very much about the resurrection of Jesus the Christ, which didn't happen on Saturday because it was the Sabbath. And all of the work, even the dressing of the body, stopped and waited until the first day of the week, which we only really acknowledge as the first day of the week on our calendars, our monthly calendars. You know, on our phones, we're given the option, what day of the week would you like to be first? Do you put Monday on there for the first day? Or do you just let Sunday be the first day? We're celebrating a recreation in the resurrection. The same kind of recreation that God is so hungry to give to God's people. And how should we do that? with the compassion that God shows for God's people. You know, when God gave us this day, God gave it to us as a gift. In Deuteronomy, when the Ten Commandments are relisted, it's not so much that God is requiring this that you come and worship, that like in the book of Exodus, when the commandment is given, but that you remember you used to be slaves that worked 7 days a week. And God freed you. Freed you to be God's people. Not slaves. Freed you to worship and to love and to rest. Freed you to give you the prosperity that the animals don't have. They eat and drink every day. They have to work for it every day. You may have a day of rest. You, who are God's children, may care for each other, may create community, may be the people God desires you to be. Not out of an obligation to show up and fill a pew, but out of gratitude and love. The God that loves us like this invites us to participate in that love and shows up with the words, with the gifts, in the community. And then does really send us out to meet the stranger, to show us exactly that compassion. How sad it is that we can't, even in this requirement, in this you have to go to church idea, that the very mandate for it blinds us, cripples us from seeing what is being given here. But Jesus does heal. Makes us whole. Sets us upright so that we might be his people, full of compassion and love. Amen.
Amen.
Well, let's